Boss Rush 900, day 5. So we got a pretty terrible day today. Definitely not a farm day. We've got Balinda and Cthulhu as follow-up second and third bosses that have to have cleanup. And they both add some pretty challenging constraints to the run. Our best farm so far is going to be day 3 if you have that arcane resistance and the Deathwing comp leveled up. And day 1 is probably the easiest one to just get a win on with a lower leveled team, if I remember correctly. So check out those videos if you want to see those. But for day 5 here, we've got a Dragonbone Golem as the first boss, and then Balinda and Cthulhu follow-ups, and then an artillery strikeable final boss. So for this one, our plan is to use Alexstrasza to kill a super crazy high statted Cthulhu, so we don't have to fight the beginning of the fight with the 3 enemies. And Alex could also be used against Balinda to do that fight faster, since they're both green bosses, and they'll have a lot of high stats from artillery strike. So our comp here is Varden with Band of Frost, Bwonsamdi with Arena Contender, Medivh with Unstable Runes, Alex with Dragonflight Talisman, Genn with Gilnean Strength, and Rogers with Ship Spell. You could also replace Rogers with like Balinda to make the first fight easier, but then you need to hit Artillery Strike on specifically Genn out of all 6 mercs, so hitting 1 treasure on a specific mercenary is pretty difficult. So I'm trying to do it with 2 artillery strikes here instead. So for this first turn, the first slot here is not like particularly useful. So it's really just like Bwonsamdi and Medivh. And then your third slot is kind of whatever. Alex can't do anything great since Flame Buffet and Dragon Queen's Gambit both have a cooldown. Kind of the same thing with Genn. You could do a Space Maker. Rogers can't really swing into this stuff, and then Varden, you don't even really want a flurry, so I guess Genn is the best to run out on turn 1. Since Space Maker does more than any of the other options for turn 1. I'm just going to shoot at this guy because it's the lowest health, it's going to die first, and I just want to get it dead as quickly as possible. So we're going to do an immune taunt here. Now this Creeping Madness is going to put the Fell debuff on Bwon, which means he has to be brought out next turn or he takes that Creeping Madness damage on the bench and dies. Also, if we use Deal of Fear again next turn, he'll take that damage before he becomes immune. So Creeping Madness is very bad for Bwonsamdi, but we're using it here anyway. And then next turn we're just going to not do a bounce. So we're going to bring out Varden, Bwonsamdi, and Genn here, and use a taunt and a cold snap. Now it sucks a little bit because we're not going to get to refresh this freeze since we can't bounce with Bwonsamdi without him eating this Creeping Madness damage and dying. Okay, so we have to counter ourselves because this is a 6-speed instead of a 4-speed. And then these will summon. We're going to do a Beastly Beauty to eat this melee swing. And then we're going to cold snap, so that will freeze before this Bone Drake swings. And then we're just going to shoot for some damage here with Bwonsamdi. So you do need enough cold snap damage to one-shot these summons so that they die here and freeze everybody and prevent this melee swing. If this guy had used the 4-speed, you would just let that be countered and summon again summon, which does not activate the counter rune. So this would be countered, and then this one would hit the summon. Okay, so on this turn, we have 2 melee swings coming in. I could just Ice Lance here and essentially pass the turn. But let's see if we can do something better than that. We might not be able to. So I definitely want to shoot there. So if I Ice Lance here, and I do a bounce, then I'm letting this swing into me. That's actually fine. Because Bwonsamdi's going to be immune, he won't be able to use a bounce next turn, and I will have to put him in play or he'll die. But this guy will be frozen. So I think it's good to do this. If you can't survive this guy swinging into like your Varden or something, then I guess you could just not do a bounce here and let this be countered and just freeze here. And then just deal with the next turn. The same way that we just did with the the taunt summon and a cold snap. But if we do a freeze here, we get an extra ramp, and I think it's a bit better. This will be frozen after the bounce. Okay, it swung there anyway, so now we can bounce next turn with Bwonsamdi. I don't think it's available, though. This should be the third turn. Oh, no, wait, I think it is available, because we didn't bounce on turn 2. Okay, so we don't have a counter rune this time, but we have that green guy frozen. So I'm going to bring out Varden, Bwonsamdi, and I could use Medivh, or I could use Genn. So if we bring out Medivh, I think Medivh's just better. Because you can always taunt the counter rune if you need that to use that as a taunt, just like you would use the Genn summon. And the counter rune kind of sort of has taunt anyways, because they like to swing at it. We are planning to cold snap here, so we just have to deal with this one Creeping Madness swing. So I can do a bounce here. I could go bird and cold snap, and then no matter where this guy swings, we should be fine, since he doesn't have a high attack anomaly. But if this were a really high attack anomaly, I could just taunt the counter rune here. But I think I'm going to go for the bird. And then we should get a freeze refresh on these guys with the cold snap. Okay, so we do need to bring Bwonsamdi out next turn so he doesn't die to Creeping Madness on the bench. And we always want Varden. And then I kind of have some flexibility here. So, one of the reasons I brought Ship Spell on Rogers is that if you have a 6-speed attack or a frozen green, and then you have the Summon Skeletal Flares and a 4-speed Creeping Madness attack, you can use Ship Spell on that red construct to make it go last, and then counter yourself if you have a counter rune. And then all you'll get is the Skeletal Flare summon, and then you can cold snap off that before anyone else acts. So Rogers is a pretty decent option here, but you can also block that Skeletal Flare with a Medivh taunt or a Genn taunt. We don't have board space to use a Genn taunt. Wait, we do have one slot still. So I could use Genn, I could also use Medivh. Medivh can also ramp this bird's damage. I'm going to bring Medivh, and then we have an extra counter rune to work with as well. So this should give us the most options and some bird ramp, and we can probably kill this red now. And as soon as this red dies, if you've got a counter rune and Varden in play, you should be completely set on the fight. I think they win every single time from that position. So I'm really hoping that this shoots at least once into the Skeletal Flare. We're going to put all our damage into that here anyway. We want to counter ourselves. We're going to keep this extra rune around. I don't think I want the board space that badly to want to kill it off. Alright, so we got the flurry shot. If you didn't, though, you should still have some outs here. So I think this comp beats this every time now. I guess your flurries could mess up the speeds a little bit so that it doesn't always win. We kind of did mess up the speeds here because we got this hanging the balance at 6 speed instead of 4, so we can't cold snap before this Draconid Rush. Since this is going to summon too slowly. I guess that's an advantage of Rogers as well. So I could bounce, but I don't think I want to. I don't really want to counter this, but I might need to because of the speed. Alright, I want to try to kill this. I could just freeze Ice Lance this. So these skeletal flares that this summons will act at 4 speed next turn. So they might be swinging into me, and then I try to cold snap. This could also be coming in at 4 speed, but if that happens, then this would be countered as long as it's not flurry slowed. I could also Ice Lance here and bounce so that this thing is frozen next turn, and then I have an easier time. Because Dragonbone doesn't ever do anything threatening, he just does this and then puts death rattles on things. I kind of like the bounce. So if we Ice Lance this and bounce, then I think I want another bird. Which means I need to kill this off. Okay, so one of those is going to be on the bench. Or at least one of those. And we didn't get Creeping Madness, so we don't have to bring out Bwonsamdi. We could go with Genn and Medivh here. And then there's no more bounces left. Or I could bring Bwonsamdi again and still have the option for more bounces. I could even bring Alex and use Dragon Queen's Gambit on the green, because it's got a lot of attack. I'm just going to go with this, though. So by splitting these up, I actually have the option to Cold Snap next turn when that extra one comes back out. So I don't even have to Cold Snap this turn. Or if this one like sticks around. So I could just Flurry this turn and shoot here. This one's more ramped. So this guy will be countered, and then we're just going to shoot a bunch here. Or shoot at the green. I would have hoped for all the shots to just hit the green, but this is alright. And we don't care if we slowed down the summon spell next turn, since we have this extra one coming off the bench that we can snap off of. Okay, we did slow this as well, although that would have been countered. And this guy swinging is probably not a problem. So I can just Cold Snap here. So this gets countered, and we Cold Snap. And we'll shoot here. Just go for max damage on the green. Okay, so now he basically doesn't do anything, because we can Cold Snap every time he summons the things. And we also just do a ton of damage here, so I'm just going to do the damage. And we could kill our own mercenaries off if we wanted to, but we don't plan to for this. So we'd really like to hit an artillery strike right away, because we have everything set up to deal with the bosses. Alright, and we got the double, that's nice. I don't think any of this other stuff matters, so I might as well just take the artillery strike. So we are going to have to fight Balinda here. So I think I want to use Genn, Varden, and Medivh. Oh wait, we have Alex, so we could do that as well. So maybe Genn, Alex. could do Genn Alex Varden or Genn Alex Medivh. I think either is fine. With Medivh, you can guarantee that you never take any damage because you can just counter whatever you feel like. With Varden, you could probably ramp off of Balinda's summons. And as long as you have an even speed ability to use every other turn to heal back up after the Crestfallen rebukes, you should be fine with the Genn heal. So any of those should work. And you could even use, I mean, you could probably use any combination as long as you have Genn in play. But I think with Varden it does the most damage. Medivh is also quite good though. So I'll just use Medivh. We'll put the 3 reds out against the green. Losing some efficiency by having a diamond portrait on here since it adds extra roleplay. There's no reason to do anything on turn 1 really. Alright, so I'm just gonna Dragon Queen's Gambit, and I guess I'll get some birds out here. And we can get a summon. I don't really need a summon. I can buff my counter rune if I want to. With a Medivh taunt. And any turn that I don't like, I can just pass. I mean, I don't need to let it summon here. I can kind of just do every other turn since I have the Dragon Queen's Gambits. And those do a lot of damage. I don't have to keep this counter ward alive either, since we can just heal back up anytime we get Crestfallen rebuked, and none of this other stuff really does enough damage to matter. The Frostburn will never ramp enough to actually kill me. I don't think any of this matters. Okay, so we got a Crestfallen rebuke. So I just want to kill that with something. I'm going to Dragon Queens here. This does enough. And then we'll shoot here. Oh, I can just let the Crestfallen be countered. I don't even have to let it happen. Since it's 1 speed, so we'll just do that. So pretty quick and easy fight, especially with the Alex, since this has buffed attack. Just going through the motions here. It should only be like 1 or 2 more turns. Maybe 3 if we need the second Dragon Queens. I think she might die this turn. Because it's 800 and these are ramped quite a lot. Alright, so now for Cthulhu, the plan is to throw away some mercenaries and then use this same team here to kill Cthulhu. You can also take Frost Ritual if you hit that. I guess I'll take this one. And we'll take an Aluneth. So for Cthulhu, whoever you throw out first is going to die. And then you need to follow up with your Medivh and your Alexstrasza and your Genn. So Medivh, Alex, and Genn stay back. We're gonna throw Rogers, Bwon, and Varden out here. That's a pretty big boy. So what is that? 1.3 million health with 246,000 attack. Pretty nice.
Destiny is at hand. This one's mine.
So on these tentacle summons from Cthulhu, you need to make sure they don't hit your arcane ward and survive. So we're going to use Genn taunts and Medivh taunts to deal with that. So on turn 1, if this was a tentacle summon and Cthulhu was not frozen, you would just taunt one of your own mercenaries that has enough attack to kill the tentacle. Since they're frozen though, we get to do whatever we want. So we'll just shoot some stuff, even though this damage is pretty inconsequential. And I guess I'll just put like HP here. Since Cthulhu is frozen. So the tentacle summons, you can't just pass the turn. If there's a tentacle summon, it's not an ability, just like Genn's summon is not an ability, so it does not activate the counter rune, so you have to deal with those tentacles every time so that you can counter these mind flays. So on the Mind Flay turns, I believe you have to just pass. You can summon Genn summons though, because they don't activate the counter rune. So there's a tentacle summon, so we have a taunt that has attack on it that deals at least 12 damage, so this tentacle's just going to die to this taunt. So we can counter here, do a Dragon Queen's Gambit, and shooting with anything except for Dragon Queen's Gambit is like pointless. You could use Medivh birds, they do eventually ramp up quite a bit, but it doesn't really matter. So just do not taunt your Arcane Ward if it doesn't have attack on turns where there's a tentacle, because it can kill you. I guess I'll just summon this bird. And don't swing with this, obviously. You need to keep one board slot for a taunt, but you can use your Medivh taunt as well. Okay, just passing on Mind Flay. And there's a tentacle, so we'll go ahead and do this. And if you ever need to, you can swing with this and resummon the taunt to basically get it back to full health. Okay, that's a Mind Flay, that's a pass. And a tentacle, so we can go. And I don't even need to act with these other guys. So pretty quick and easy, actually, with the Alexstrasza. I know some people were fighting this with just Medivh birds and stuff, or with Frost Ritual and taking like 80-something turns to do it, like barely getting in before the 90-turn limit. So this seems like a lot less stressful version of the fight to do, since that's a lot of turns to take without making any mistakes. I mean, it's a pretty simple pattern once you get into it, but still takes a long time to do it that way. So I prefer the Alex method, personally. And like I was saying, if you would rather have the easier first fight, you can drop... You should be able to drop Rogers Then you have to hit Artillery Strike specifically on Genn. I think you need to hit Artillery Strike specifically on Genn by the last fight anyway, though, because you do have to sacrifice 3 mercenaries. I guess you can throw away Genn, and it should still work, because you can just use Medivh taunt for the tentacles and put that taunt on someone that has attack so that they don't hit the counter rune. Or if you hit Bird Buddy on Medivh, you can put attack on your counter rune, and then you don't have to taunt anybody, and then you would also be able to get birds out. But you're really just relying on that Alex damage. So as long as you have Alex and Medivh and 1 artillery strike alive, then you should be able to sacrifice any of the other 3 to Cthulhu, and it should work. So not the worst day, even though it was like a very tricky set of bosses to get, but certainly not farmable. Our best farm is still going to be day 3 or maybe day 1, but day 1 does have that Ragnaros cleanup, and if you wanted to guarantee that fight, you do need to bring those extra mercenaries to mess up your artillery strike odds, so that you don't have to hit Frost Ritual specifically. So yeah, day 3 farm with this Drekthar comp, Drekthar Deathwing comp seems to be the best with 3 artillery strikes, but you do need to have a pretty high level arcane resistance for that one. And I've took mine up to 152, which I don't think I'm going to level this anymore this week. So that's, if you're wondering how high is too high or high enough, I think this is kind of like the sweet spot. And I also leveled this Elementium armor up to get to 51 HP, which is just over, if I hit the very highest, I think it's 337 arcane anomaly, these Elementium terrors that you can summon by taunting on turn 1 when those copies swing into your mercenaries, with that plus the 152 on Drek is just enough that those terrors survive an arcane explosion. And then that gives you the better odds of Power of the Guardian not killing your Deathwing. So I think this is where I'm stopping on those upgrades. So then it's just banking for Destroy All Life upgrades so I can get this up to, I'm aiming for 226 by the end of the week, or it should be 232 for the next week to have it capped out. So if I can get this up to 232 by next week, that would be ideal, and then 232 on the Rattlegore health. I don't know if I'll farm enough to do that, but that's sort of the goal to work towards. So I need like 20,000 renown or something, or I think it's like 17,000 to get to 226, and then another like 6,000. So it ends up being like 23,000, I think, to get to where I want to be for next week. And then I wouldn't need to farm. I would just be like doing maintenance on Destroy All Life from then onwards, which is like 2 points in Destroy All Life. It's like 1.5 points in Destroy All Life per week from then onwards. So that covers day 5, and good luck on your runs.